What's up, Banter fam? It's your host, Miles here. Welcome back to the show. And in today's episode, I'm going to be telling you a coin that the whales have been accumulating. And I'm going to be showing you a staking strategy off the back of that to take advantage. There's a couple pretty cool strategies I'll be showing you at the end of the show after I talk about the ecosystem that I think a lot of people are sleeping on, but the VCs still want to stack. So it's going to be a huge show. Let's get straight into it. And I actually, this morning, woke up to a message saying join the live stream, and I joined Sheldon's live, and I found out that they were live for actually like 12 or 13 hours, or at least trading for 13 hours. So it was a crazy morning. We put in some longs, we put in some shorts. It was a lot of fun. The guys made a lot of profit. It was overnight in Australia, so I missed the longs, but I did manage to get onto some of the shorts. So that was really fun, a fun way to start the morning. And yeah, I enjoyed that stream a lot. And I just wanted to show you quickly this kind of this meme that I posted, holding on during a bear market. I think this really does sum up most people's crypto journeys right now. We've got the turtles trying to fight for life here on the log. They're rocking, and then they're just dropping one by one. So these are the hodlers right now, falling like flies. This guy here, he tries to cling on, and then he finally gets wiped out. So I guess the moral of the story here is you want to be a turtle that stays on the log. And the only way to be a turtle that stays on the log is to look A, where the smart money is accumulating, and B, look forward into the future and look at narratives which are big in the future. Because, I could come on and give you like a narrative today that I think, that's exploding at the moment. Something very popular that's pumping right now, but I'm kind of gearing my focus a little bit in this bear market to projects that I think haven't run yet, but in the next bull run are really going to get, their time to shine. And I've got an interesting narrative today focused around interoperability that I want to talk about, because I think it's a narrative that hasn't run, that is basically due to run. And obviously, when we talk about interoperability and we talk about the projects underneath that wing, then DOT is really, the one that stands out. And it's the one that I want to talk about, for a little bit today, because I think that DOT is one of these projects that was, heavily slept on last bull run relative to other coins. So, we saw these L1s really explode. We saw Binance explode. We saw Solana explode. Obviously, we saw AVAX and Phantom explode. But DOT never really got its time to shine. It never really outshone those other L1s. I mean, in the peak of its run, I think it almost hit $60, but it really failed to capitalize on that Parachain hype and the auctions that took place. And ever since then, it's kind of been grinding downwards. But my opinion on Polkadot is really that it hasn't had time to run yet. Kind of the last narrative was more centered around, L1s, was more centered around some of these other pieces of infrastructure. Obviously, the Luna stablecoin narrative was quite big as well. But Polkadot is kind of playing that interoperability narrative. So it's going more so for the narrative that the future is truly decentralized, and it's going towards making sure that multiple blockchains that speak to each other work well and are interconnected. And that's really Gavin Wood's thesis. So Polkadot, I think, is a narrative that hasn't run yet properly. It hasn't really seen its true potential. If you guys remember back to last bull run, I think the main issue with DOT was that, the usability wasn't very good. If you were trying to use the wallets, trying to engage in DeFi, it didn't really have that compatibility. It wasn't EVM compatible, or at least the L1 chains underneath DOT weren't fully launched yet. So it never really had a chance. It never really had that chance to capitalize on that bull run hype. But I want to look at it now because I want to frame ourselves for the next bull run. I want to set us up for success in the next cycle. So I think a narrative like interoperability is something we have to focus on to try and understand. So I want to run through quickly what Polkadot is, look through some of the statistics which are underpinning my thesis in terms of, DOT being a valuable long-term hold, and then look at a staking strategy. I've got one on Curve Finance, which is, pretty crazy, but, is quite lucrative. And then also one on Parallel Finance, where you can actually earn some passive income off it. And you're not just keeping your tokens sitting idle in a wallet. So the first thing that I wanted to do was kind of run through what DOT is and how it operates. And basically, the gist of what you need to understand is it's kind of like this unified system / network. So they frame themselves as a next-gen blockchain protocol, connecting several specialized blockchains into one network. So really, they're going after decentralization here. They're going after interoperability. And DOT is kind of, in my opinion, more of a layer 0. So it has layer 1s built underneath it. Obviously, you've got Moonbeam, you've got Akala, etc. But DOT is more of this layer 0 framework. So it's a framework that you can build other other chains on top of, which is one of the major reasons, why I think something like this can succeed, because it's not framing itself for the short term, a short-term pump based on TVL or Ponzonomics. It's kind of setting itself up to be this overarching network, and that's really Gavin Wood's vision. He wants to promote interoperability by connecting all the different blockchains. He wants to promote scalability and innovation as well. So connecting blockchains is very important, because we've seen historically many hacks take place, to do with some of these bridges that have been exploited. Vitalik obviously had that famous thread that pointed out, some of the downfalls of these bridges. Now, although I think bridges are a massive narrative and they're going to perform well, something like DOT, I think, is an even stronger narrative from a security standpoint, because all the chains operate seamlessly with each other. So you're not exposing yourself to multiple ecosystems. When you're swapping between these chains, they all connect to each other and talk to each other. And this is A, better for security, but it's also B, lends a hand to the scalability of the network. And it helps DOT become a lot more scalable than some of these other chains. So the way it actually achieves this is in three ways. It has a relay chain, which is basically, the base chain that connects the individual chains together. It has a parachain, which is kind of almost like subnets, but they're chains that operate in parallel underneath the relay chain. So they run through the DOT network, they're parallelized chains, and they help scale the system by parallelizing operations, meaning the relay chain can divert traffic onto some of these parachains and enable DOT to scale, superior to some of the other scaling solutions that we've seen on the market. And this is a very important one, the bridge chain, which is the chain that connects different blockchains that don't use Polkadot's governance protocols together. And this is, in a more secure fashion to some of the other offerings we've seen on the market. So those are some of the, the reasons why I think DOT can succeed, because Gavin's really going after this long-term vision. He's really trying to build out a true decentralized future. And we can see that is exactly what they're trying to do through the DOT supply and the DOT tokenomics here. So as generated from the Genesis block, this is the initial supply of DOT tokens, which was around 10 million. So they had 5 million, which were auctioned in the ICO, 2 million, which were pre-launch contributions, and then 3 million reserved for the Web3 Foundation. Now, this isn't a hard cap, so DOT technically is inflationary, but they're using an inflationary model in order to incentivize validators to participate. So if you want to onboard validators, onboard users, and make the network more decentralized by offering an inflationary mechanism or offering staking rewards to those validators, you're actually incentivizing people to make the network more secure. Now, I will get into all the data and the metrics which, suggest that the whales are holding this and are accumulating this, but I just kind of want to frame, what DOT is before I get into all that, because, it's important to understand the tech before you invest in something. I would never recommend, investing in something before you kind of understand where it fits in. And, where I think it fits in is definitely this interoperability narrative, which we haven't really seen run. I mean, we've seen Stargate. I mean, you could argue Rune kind of falls into that category, performed quite well, but I think DOT was just a little ahead of its time. If you guys actually remember back to the bull run, what happened was the parachain auctions were launching, towards the end of the bull run. And, there was a little bit of hype leading up to it, but it kind of fell flat because the UI wasn't very friendly. And then the parachain auctions, once by the time they ended, these ecosystems didn't really have enough time underneath the bull run to build themselves out. So I think that by the time the next cycle comes around, whenever that may be, maybe it's 12 months, maybe it's 24 months, when the next cycle comes around, an ecosystem like DOT will be a lot more developed and, ready to harness and more equipped to harness the amount of users that are potentially going to come in. And that will therefore reflect a lot better on the token price than, previously seen. Which is, I think, one of the reasons why DOT didn't perform that well and underperformed. But we all know we want to be getting in the narratives that we think can outperform the market in the next cycle, not the narratives that performed last cycle. Because what you have to remember is a lot of these coins in the top 50, in the top 100, some of them and a lot of them won't reach their all-time highs ever again. Because in the new cycle, there's going to be new narratives that come about. Some of these L1 EVM compatible chains, as well as they may have done last cycle, I think it's unrealistic to expect everything to hit its all-time high. That's just not how it works in terms of, the total amount of liquidity in the crypto market. So we have to look at narratives that we think are going to be built up in the next cycle and are ready to explode, not chase the old ones just because, something's 99% down, it's going to 20x to highs. It's like, it doesn't really work like that, in the case of a lot of these projects. So this is kind of like a funny little image here. There's Vitalik with his Ethereum, and this is Polkadot for its parachain. So if you had trouble if you had trouble understanding how the Polkadot technology worked through my explanation before, then maybe this can help you understand. You've got the relay chain, you've got the parachains, and Ethereum is just kind of stacking layer 2 solutions on top of each other. So I thought that was quite a funny way of kind of explaining how the parachains work. So, all right, I want to do a couple things now because, we know interoperability at some point is going to run, right? And, that's kind of the first part of our thesis. But we need to now substantiate the thesis. We now need to look at the data. And whenever I'm researching a project, this is the next step I take. So this is like a bit of a window into how my brain works when it comes to analyzing L1s in these projects. The first step is identifying the narrative based on what you're observing in the market, based on what the VCs are investing in, kind of based on the general market sentiment. Once you've identified narratives that you think will run, then it comes time to select, the projects underneath that narrative. For the example of today's video, I'm using DOT. But the way you would do this is, in a couple of ways. You look at research reports, some of the top research committees. I mean, you've got great data on Messari, which I'm about to go through, Nansen, Token Terminal. You want to be going through these reports. And then after that, you want to be looking at, where the VCs are putting their money. Because at the end of the day, this market is controlled by the VCs and the whales. So we want to be joining them. We don't want to be trying to beat them. So by holding the coins that they're most interested in accumulating, we're setting ourselves up for more success in this market than if you're trying to just take punts on random projects. So the first thing I want to do is look through DOT's Messari report because it has some good insights. Now, some of these insights are positive and some of these insights are bearish, but it's good to get an idea of both. We always want to stay objective whenever we're researching a chain to get an idea of how things are actually developing. So there was 5 years in research and development that went into DOT, a lot longer than a lot of these other chains. And the Parachains are now live. So we saw the Parachain auctions last year, and they went live. And, I think a lot of them, they're a success. A lot of them price-wise haven't performed so well since. I would say that's generally a reflection of market sentiment and not necessarily, the health of the individual technology. But, a lot of those projects haven't performed so well, but maybe that creates an opportunity for us. So we have to look at the network usage, and the user accounts, they grew rapidly during the bull run. I mean, there was a lot of growth in the network usage. I mean, in November, there were 90,000 new daily user accounts. Now, if we look at Ethereum's daily user accounts, it was roughly 100,000 during this period. So DOT was matching it with ETH. Now we see the user accounts dropping right down. We're kind of starting to taper off here. And I mean, there's two ways to look at this. The first way to look at it is to say, wow, the metric is going down. That means that the ecosystem is losing traction. I'm going to get out. I'm not accumulate. Or you can look at it from the other perspective that, this is now a chance to get in to great technology at a much lower level than previously anticipated, meaning, we get better risk reward entries in the long term. So the only way to substantiate whether this is kind of like a transitory effect based on macroeconomic and crypto conditions, or whether it's, simply, permanent in terms of, user growth genuinely diminishing, there's a few ways that we can look at this. The first way is by looking at address growth in DOT. It's still been very positive. There's over 1 million addresses that actually hold DOT, which I think is overall a positive for the chain. And the other one you got to look at is development activity to see how this ecosystem is, actually developing. And Michael just said, I love staking my DOT at 14%. I'm going to show you how to stake it for 27% today. Or no, actually 35% today. So I'm going to almost double your staking rewards there, Michael. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the last segment of the video to really maximize your holdings here. So the development activity, this is really the key now to look into, the health of the ecosystem, because this is how crypto works. The developers are what dictates the success of an entire ecosystem. So it all starts with the VC funding. You need the VC funding. You need the big backers to come in and underpin development growth, because they're the ones essentially that are going to be funding and incentivizing development on the chain. Once you get development on the chain, that creates decentralized apps and applications and use cases, which attracts users. So the only way users are ever going to come onto a chain is if that chain genuinely has solid development, has protocols that they want to use, has a use case and a need inside the market. So the VCs lead to development, but then the developers lead to the users, which obviously, once users come into a network and start transacting, that increases the TVL, increases the transactions, and we all know how the network effect users works. The more users that a chain can accrue, the more value that chain accrues. So more users equals more reward essentially for the token price. So what I want to do is I kind of want to backtrack and have a look at how DOT's development activity is going, because this is at the end of the day the most important thing, or at least the second most important piece of the pie, on the food chain in regards to whether a chain will be successful or not. You've got VC backing, and then you've got development, and both kind of go hand in hand. So Electric Capital did a great report, and I've looked through this report numerous times because it's so insightful in terms of where the developers are developing. We can see that Polkadot is actually the second most developed on chain. It has 1,400 total developers. Now Ethereum has 3,800. So DOT is actually coming in pretty close as a very close second as the biggest ecosystem in terms of development activity. This is a decent indicator to me that the DOT ecosystem will grow in the future. Obviously, it's not exactly correlated, but typically the more developers an ecosystem has long term, the more users it should accrue. That's just kind of the law of what I laid out before. So it's a nice sign that Polkadot actually has that development activity. And we can see that, it's not just the amount of developers, it's also the growth of developers. So DOT has almost as fast of a growth as Ethereum in terms of monthly developers since launch. It's grown over 350 monthly developers since it launched. And, obviously this is scaled against how long the chain has been in existence for. Since DOT is a newer chain, it's pretty nice to see that quick development actually coming in. And I think that this is a real positive sign for the network in general. And we can see that the development activity has been very, very strong. And if we look at Masari, this is the real interesting point, actually. The developer activity, despite the wallet addresses going down, which is a pure reflection of retail sentiment, the developer activity has actually stayed the same or increased. So we can see that it's still very, very strong. The development activity events are over 10,000 for the month, even in March. I don't have the data up until June, but I imagine, we're staying fairly similar over the last couple of months as well, which is a good sign that developers are still developing on the network. And that's also, that's basically the major thing I look for, when I'm substantiating an ecosystem and its long-term success. It's like, are there developers there? And, you can go for the coins that are being hyped by retail. You can go for the L1s that have the hot narrative, but I'm trying to set up my portfolio for long-term success here. So I have to look at the projects that, the VCs are backing, and also the ones that actually have tangible development. Now, in terms of VC backing, because we've ticked the developer box in terms of DOT, we have to look at, what funds are actually holding DOT, and, what to what extent they're holding DOT. And this is the thumbnail of the video for a reason. This is the project that the whales are holding for this reason. DOT is the very top ecosystem in terms of most commonly held assets by crypto hedge funds in 2021. And, I'm sure when we get the new data, this wouldn't have changed, because DOT is by far the most held by more than 70% to the nearest, which is Near Protocol. Also one that I talk about a lot on the show, because these are the things that I look for when I'm substantiating whether something's a long-term hold or not. I look for who is holding these assets. You can see Terra also comes forth. Unfortunately, that was a bit of a mistake on the VC's part. Just as a side note, the Terra situation was actually quite interesting, because it was basically the first time where VCs got wiped. Usually when we have these events, VCs are usually the ones to get their money in and out the quickest. But I know multiple VCs and multiple insiders that, lost significantly on Terra. They didn't really see it coming. So that was unfortunate that VCs were holding that one. But in general, Polkadot trends far beyond most of these other assets in terms of where the VCs are holding their funds. Now, as said here, institutions have an unfair advantage when it comes to knowledge and info. They know what's developing. They know where the space is headed before any of the retail participants know. So it's worth paying attention to where they're putting their money. And I think if you're not paying attention to where these big VCs are putting their money, you're doing something wrong, because it's very important to look at what the whales are accumulating, what the whales are actually holding. And, it's no secret that DOT is the top one, because I think, the market pays a premium for decentralization. And DOT certainly has that narrative going for it. It has two things that not a lot of other L1s can speak for it. It has the interoperability narrative, the security narrative. A lot of other chains, they've had downtime, they've had issues with exploits, Solana being one of them. DOT kind of ticks that box. And then also, And then, yeah, so it ticks that box very well, and it also has the VC backing that a lot of other chains don't have, which ticks the second box, which is one of the major constituents of success in crypto. So then the next thing we have to look at when we are substantiating a thesis, so we've ticked off the developers, we've ticked off, the VC backing, we've ticked off the, what it does and where the technology fits in crypto. The next thing we have to look at is how the ecosystem is developing. What strategic partnerships are they looking at to expand? Because what DOT didn't have, and I talked about, what it does have over these other chains, but what it didn't have is it didn't have a good UI. It wasn't very usable for retail. It wasn't even EVM compatible. So you needed its own wallet, which, admittedly was very, very janky. It's one of the reasons why I never participated in DeFi, because frankly, it wasn't very nice to use. So we're getting to a point now through these partnerships I'm about to show you where the narrative is shifting slightly, and I'm seeing this shift happen. And a lot of these announcements only happened in the last week, guys. So I'm giving you the news, quite soon after it's actually occurred. That's why I wanted to do this live this week, because, I wanted to kind of get ahead of this narrative a little bit. So the first thing that they did is that they partnered with Injective Labs. Obviously, it's an exchange, and they integrated the Polkadot assets to expand their cross-chain universe. So it's just one example of, Injective is built on Cosmos. One example of Polkadot integrating with these other ecosystems, but probably the biggest piece of news that we got was Moonbeam adding cross-chain compatibilities, introducing xcDOT. So if you guys don't previously know, you couldn't actually use DOT on a MetaMask wallet. You had to use its own Polkadot wallet. As usable as it was, it didn't really open up the door for DeFi because there wasn't many applications on DOT. But after the Parachain auctions, we saw Akala, Moonbeam Network, obviously Moonriver on Kusama open up. And these are now facilitating DeFi on DOT. One of the reasons why, I was skeptical in the past of DOT was the fact it didn't really have DeFi. Well, now through this Moonbeam, obviously through the Moonbeam launch and the integration, this actually now becomes possible to use Polkadot, on EVM chains, which means you can earn much stronger yield and earn, up to 35%, which I'll be showing you in a minute on your DOT, which is pretty crazy compared to other L1s. I mean, on Solana, you're going to be making what, 12%? On, Phantom, maybe 20%. On AVAX, maybe like 15%. So DOT is almost double that at the moment, and probably has double, I don't want to come out on a limb and say it, but, you can make the argument that DOT has double the security from a risk reward perspective, just because it has been around for a while. And the narrative hasn't quite run yet, which means you're not buying into these overly inflated, overly hyped prices like some of these other chains. So the next one that was massive, and the next integration that occurred, was the Osmosis integration. So the proposal 249 passed, which approved the Axela bridge. So it's a bridge that kind of links the Cosmos ecosystem with the Moonbeam network. So now you can take your xcDOT that you have on Moonbeam, your EVM DOT, and then you can use that to bridge across to Osmosis. So now you can use DOT on Cosmos. So all these little integrations are basically what is starting kind of the next wave for Polkadot. Because as I said in the past, we didn't have this. So now we're starting to get these integrations. It becomes a lot more usable as a chain. And that is really the box that wasn't ticked for me, because I knew it had the VC backers. I knew it had the development activity. I knew the ecosystem was massive and it had a good community, but it wasn't usable for DeFi. And that's, really the point where I struggled to understand DOT. But now we are seeing that starting to be implemented. I have a much clearer path now of where DOT is headed. And that's why I'm much more comfortable today DCAing into it. And at the end of the video, I'll get into my DCA strategy and what I plan on doing price-wise with DOT, because obviously it's a choppy market, so we don't want to get wrecked. People are saying, what happened to your green screen? Is my green screen good? It looks good to me. So yeah, this was the next big announcement. The next really, really big announcement was the Lido finance integration. Now, I talked about Moonbeam Network being EVM compatible. I talked about, these integrations that, DOT is now starting to get. But at the end of the day, you need big integrations with major DeFi players in order to facilitate, liquid staking, in order to facilitate staking. I just wanted to answer this question. I like DOT, but I do not like VCs getting into it. This causes pumps and dumps. That's why I like Cardano, mostly because it's VC money free. All right, I'm going to counter this point. Now, I know what you're saying. As a retail participant, it can be a little bit overwhelming, fighting the major amount of capital these VCs have over the market. And yes, they manipulate the market completely. Yes, they'll dump on you after ICOs. And yes, they will short and they'll manipulate the market to shake you out. However, at the same time, VCs are one of, if not the most important constituents of success in crypto. If you are investing in a project and it doesn't have VC backing, you're instantly at a disadvantage because, as I explained before with the flow of funds, you need that VC backing in order to spur development, and you need development in order to gain users. And also runway in a bear market now becomes a very important consideration because a lot of chains that were, extremely successful during a bull run, well, now they may not have the backing and the runway to continue development, to continue marketing throughout a bear market. So the chains that are heavily backed by VCs, yes, it means the prices could be more manipulated, but it also means they're a lot more secure during downtrends because they have the backing and they have the network, capable to be able to integrate. Like, for example, Polkadot, because it has the VC backing, Near Protocol as well, a very VC-backed chain, they now have the connections in order to get, obviously exchange listings, but then, strategic partnerships in the real world, strategic partnerships, with other crypto projects. You can't fade the importance of VCs in crypto. And I was like you, for a while, I was kind of like, skeptical of VCs. I didn't like the narrative of these VC-backed chains. And yes, you have to be very aware of vesting schedules and unlocks when it comes to these L1s, 100%. Like, I'll never invest in an L1 if we're about to get dumped on due to the unlock schedule. However, I have come to realize the importance of VCs, especially in a market like this. And that's why it's, one of the number one boxes I look at now when I'm investing in a new project. Does it have backing? And if it doesn't, I'm initially off the bat quite skeptical because it's so important, especially in volatile times like this. So that's probably my counterpoint to the VC argument. But going back to my, the topic I was talking about before is that now, because of this EVM compatibility, we're seeing liquid staking start to come into DOT. And this integration, I think, is going to be really important because it means that you can liquid stake DOT, and it also offers, more liquidity on the market, which, is generally a good thing in most circumstances for DOT. So I want to run through, my liquid staking strategy to earn over 30% on DOT, because if you're going to hold Polkadot just in your wallet, you may as well put it to work. You may as well earn 30%. Like, you are literally earning passive income, off an asset. And if you choose to compound that asset, then what that actually going to do is it's going to increase your holdings over time. So even though the market might be low at the moment, when the market eventually recovers, which it will, especially in the case of these bigger caps like DOT, maybe not so much the smaller caps, but the bigger caps that, eventually start, rising closer to their all-time highs again, you're going to have more tokens available if you're actually accumulating during this period. And, putting in fresh capital isn't always the best way to go. Sometimes you need to stake. And, I would argue most of the time you need to stake so you can accumulate and just accrue these tokens slowly over time. And if you are risk off and you need capital, well, having those tokens staked means you can actually earn passive income. So you can earn dollars to keep, the bank ticking over a little bit during these times of volatility. So, no, I haven't forgot about Cosmos, Vlad. I really like Cosmos, but that's another narrative altogether. And I think right now I'm more focused on my DOT research because that's the narrative I see a little bit clearer. I have some concerns, but I'm also largely bullish on Cosmos. But in terms of DOT, I think I think as a risk reward play, it's looking quite good long term. But let's go through the staking strategy because this one is not too complex, but you're going to need to pay attention if you want to take advantage of this 30% APR. The first thing is obviously to own Polkadot. I assume a lot of you own it. If you do want a DCA, I'm not saying ape in. In fact, just quickly, I'll kind of run you through, my DCA strategy before I get into the staking. My DCA strategy with DOT is similar to, okay, so most of my available capital that goes into the market right now is going into Bitcoin and Ethereum, just because it's much safer for me at the moment to gear my DCAs in this unfriendly market towards, the projects we know are going to be around in 5 years. That's Bitcoin, Ethereum. So anything I'm DCAing into, that is a hodl bag. Now, the way I treat my hodl portfolio is the majority of that portfolio I have a very long time frame on. I probably have a 3 to 5 year time frame on my hodl portfolio, which means I'm not swing trading something like DOT. So I have no interest in catching the bottom and I have no interest in catching the top. I just DCA slowly over time. So with Bitcoin and Ethereum, that's the strategy. But I have a select few altcoins which I think long-term are primed for success, which I include in this category. For example, Polkadot is now one of them. AVAX to an extent, probably lesser so than DOT at the moment, but still to an extent. Near Protocol as well. Some of these major L1s I will consider DCAing into, as a long-term hold. Now that's, obviously my DCAs are probably skewing 70% to Bitcoin ETH, then 30% are going towards these safer L1s. I'm not making a play on those smaller cap alts right now. I am trading them. I'm actively leverage trading them, but I'm not accumulating some of the really low caps because I think there's a high likelihood we see lower levels. So I'm not going to put myself in a position where I run out of cash. I need to make sure I keep stablecoins on the side, or we're going to miss opportunities to accumulate at the lows of lows. But, something like DOT fits more into my hodl bag than it does in my swing trading bag. And if you guys want a bit more explanation on that, I kind of split my portfolio up into 3 categories. It's the hodl, which the majority of, I'll hold for many, many years. And yes, I'll take profits on a little bit when I need it, but the majority is safe. Then I've got my swing trading bag, which is more narrative based. So, this could include up to 1 year holds, but, this is the percentage of my portfolio which I'm more comfortable in, swinging a little bit more. So taking heavy profits. A lot of the mid caps, small caps would fall into this category. And then the third category of my portfolio is trading. And this is mostly leverage trading on BYBIT. And this will be swing trading coins, very short holds, maybe a few hours, sometimes maybe even a few days or weeks in the right market. But this is like where basically I have no attachment to these coins. This is a pure proxy to make money. So there's kind of 3 tiers to my portfolio. Now, where I put DOT is in the top tier of DCAing because it's a project, based on the fundamentals I'm comfortable accumulating into. So that's one of the major reasons why I'm doing so. But you have to work out for yourself what projects fit into which category. You may view, DOT as a swing trade. You may think it only, it might run in a year's time and you want to take heavy profits. Go for it. It's all up to you and your own discretion, your own goals. But that's kind of how I frame my portfolio. So the staking strategy will obviously require you to hold DOT. So as I said, I'm accumulating on, DCAing slowly over time. And I'm doing so on BYBIT. There's a link in the description if you want to take part in that. In fact, we just did like a 3 or 4 hour stream. The guys were on for like 12 hours this morning, doing trades live on BYBIT. So if you want to take advantage of that, get involved with the live trading show. It was a lot of fun. In fact, I'll show you my setup here. I was on stream with the lads today. We had Sheldon, we had Craig, Mike. It was really good. And yeah, so if you want to take part of that, make sure you go to BYBIT account, link in the description, sign up. There's trading bonuses if you get involved through the link. And yeah, obviously, that is going to be required whenever you're DCAing into alts. You're going to need an exchange to do so on. So, I use BYBIT to do so. But once you have DOT, this is where things get really interesting. So I want to run you through my Lido staking strategy for Polkadot and run you through, exactly how I'm doing so. All right. This is the strategy. So basically, Lido's liquid staking. It means you can stake your DOT and retain liquidity of your assets. So unlike some other sites where you're locking up and you may be locked up for 20 or 30 days or something ridiculous, you can actually lock up and keep liquidity of your assets through an application like Lido. So there's a 3-step play here that I want to show you to get your money in curve through Lido. So there's 3 steps. Sounds complicated, but it's quite simple. The first thing you will need is a Polkadot wallet. It's called a JIS wallet, I'm pretty sure. I'm accidentally opening the wrong tab here. I just pressed the print button. You'll need a Polkadot wallet to get started. It's called the JS wallet. So you'll need to go to polkadot.js. Make sure you have a DOT wallet, and that is where you're going to be sending your DOT tokens from an exchange to the wallet. So that's the first step, obviously, to have it in your Polkadot wallet, which you can create. Then the next step is to get this onto Moonbeam. So once you have your DOT tokens in a Polkadot wallet, you need to get these tokens onto Moonbeam because that is the EVM compatible chain that is applicable to Lido. which is the staking strategy that we want to execute here. So what you want to do is you want to get your tokens onto Moonbeam through depositing them. So on apps.moonbeam.network/Moonbeam, you can click deposit under Polkadot. Now, depositing tokens on Moonbeam requires your Polkadot wallet, and once you deposit them, they will actually now become something called xcDOT, which is the Moonbeam EVM compatible version of DOT. So you can deposit them in Moonbeam, and now they're available for EVM compatibility, which means you can actually take part in these strategies. So once you have your DOT in Moonbeam through the Moonbeam app, so start a DOT wallet, deposit from an exchange to your wallet, then get your DOT tokens into the Moonbeam portal through depositing. Once you've got them in Moonbeam as xcDOT, you can go on to Lido. Now, what Lido is it's, as I said before, it's the liquid staking website for you to earn yield. Now, what they're doing is they're paying a 16.5% on your DOT. And then you can take those tokens and earn extra yield on them. So the first step is to Lido. You'll need a MetaMask. Obviously, you'll need a Moonbeam compatibility. So we can see in the top corner, xcDOT is now what you should have, and you should be connected to the Moonbeam network as your DOT tokens are now on Moonbeam, and you can stake them simply by entering the amount you want to stake, and then clicking stake. So I don't have any in my wallet right now, but you just enter the amount, you click stake, and then you'd automatically start earning a 10%, or actually right now it's a 16% yield on your tokens. Now, this is where things get interesting. You only want to actually stake 50% of your tokens in here. So let's say you are staking 100 DOT tokens. You would only stake 50 in Lido because you need the other 50 to create an LP. So once you stake 50% in Lido, keep 50% in xcDOT on Moonbeam, then you can come into Curve and actually create an LP. So if we go into Curve, it's moonbeam.curve.fi. This is the Curve interface on the Moonbeam chain. You can scroll down and you can see the main pools. Now, the pool I'm interested in is this xcDOT pool, which is paying 35% in Lido rewards annualized. So what you can actually do is it's got a TVL of 3.8 million. You can come in to this pool here and you can click on it. And once you click on the pool, it'll show you the tokens that you need to create an LP. So obviously, you only want 50% in staked DOT through Lido, and then you want to keep 50% in xcDOT through Moonbeam. Once you have these two holdings, so let's say you have 50 and 50, you can come into this Curve pool, click on the st.xcDOT pool, and then you can stake 50 of each token. And then once you stake these, what you want to do is click deposit and stake in the gauge. And what depositing and staking in the gauge will do is enable you to start earning these rewards. Now, Curve isn't paying you many Curve tokens. It's only paying you 0.06%, because this percentage, this first percentage, is the fees. So obviously Curve pays you based on swap fees. So you'll be earning a very negligible percentage on fees. Where you are earning a percentage is the Lido incentives. So LDO will actually pay you in LDO tokens through Curve for staking in this pool, and it'll pay you 35%. So that's annualized. So it's probably better. Better doing something like this and just keeping it in a wallet, because you're earning 35%. And in the scheme of things, Curve seems to be, a much more reputable website to stake through than some of these other offerings. So that is the first strategy. And if you do want more details on this, in case you missed something, you can either screenshot right now. Let me just get you the proper, did I just exit? Yeah, you can screenshot right now, screenshot this, that'll show you the exact steps. Or you can go to mixbytes.io and take this link up the top, and that'll give you a step-by-step in case, you're slightly lost. But that is my strategy for staking on Curve. But I have another strategy, which I think is also quite valuable. And this strategy is through parallel finance, which is less daunting. So if you're a little bit not afraid, but if you're, a little bit overwhelmed by, the Curve strategy, then parallel is a great option for you. And in fact, I would suggest doing both, because in crypto, we want to limit smart contract risk. So we don't want to have all our tokens sitting in the same pools. We want to spread it out, across multiple farms. You want to keep some in your BYBIT. You want to keep some in Curve. You want to keep some in parallel. You want to spread it out to limit risk. So the next strategy is almost as good. It's not quite paying 35%, but it's paying 23%, but it's a lot easier. So all you need to do in parallel is literally go to app.parallel.fi slash hash/staking. Then you can, or just go to Parallel, the finance website. Then come into Parallel and go onto the dot section. So if you click on Parallel, I'm not sharing my screen right now. If you click on Parallel, you click stake. And then if you click stake, it'll give you this portal, which pays you 23% APY on your holdings. And how they're generating this APY is 14.5% through the liquid staking, and then 8.56% through lending. So they're going to lend out your tokens, obviously over collateralized, and then, pay you back a percentage of the fees that they're earning from the lending. And this will enable you to earn yield on dots. You want to put your dot tokens into Parallel through the dot wallet. So this strategy is different. You don't actually need to bridge to Moonbeam for the Parallel Finance one. Only the Lido one you need to bridge to Moonbeam. The Parallel Finance one is compatible with the Polkadot wallet itself, which means you can just simply deposit your dot and enter it, and it will automatically compound for you. So staking rewards, xDOT, which is what you get in return for staking your dot. It means stake dot. This represents both your deposit and the rewards you earn on your dot each day. So it's compounding. There's no need to claim your rewards on Parallel. It's going to automatically compound for you. And xDOT acts as a share of the total pool of staked dot in Parallel. So it accumulates your staking rewards. Whenever you withdraw your dot, that's when you're going to get the extra tokens that you've been accruing. So those are two strategies. The Parallel one's a lot simpler. You literally just deposit through the Polkadot wallet. And then the Curve Finance one, I've outlaid the steps here for you, but that's the one where you need Polkadot wallet into Moonbeam, into Lido, into a Curve pool on the Moonbeam network, which is available on your MetaMask, obviously. So these are the two strategies I'm looking at. And I'm also just holding some as well, just to limit risk a bit. But, I do generally, view DOT as a potential future blue chip. A lot of these other L1s are fantastic. I believe in a lot of them. I do still have conviction in Sol, despite what's happened to it. I do like AVAX's subnets. I do like Phantom's fast, EVM compatible architecture. But something like a DOT is giving us a different angle, since it's more of an L0, more of a network. It's a different angle to these other L1s, which I think offers you a unique position in your portfolio, because you can't just own L1s, right? You have to own a diversified range of projects, especially if you are generally, hodling and farming long term. So DOT fills that interoperability narrative that we know is going to explode at some point. But it's better to start thinking about a plan to accumulate sooner rather than later. And I don't want this video's message to be ape into DOT, because that's not what I'm saying at all. Bitcoin looks horrible, could trend down towards 20K, 24K, and obviously the alts get smacked. But I'm telling you that I am DCAing slowly over time, and DOT is one of those bags for the reasons that I've outlined in this video. And maybe even if you don't buy, it's something you just add to your watch list and keep your eye on, because this is a narrative that likely will run in the future. And it's one, that I wanted to explain to you guys. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you smash the likes, absolutely destroy the like button, show some love there, and also subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel so you see future content from us. I will see you tomorrow in the next show. I'm your host, Miles, signing out. Peace out. Look at that candle from ADA, guys. Wow. Crushing the shorts. It's literally up like 6%. That's nuts.